Susan Clark, and I'd like to introduce my book, Grief Surfing. It's my first attempt at a narrative memoir, slightly unexpected because I had always dreamed of actually writing children's books, and so this one caught me a little bit by surprise. I hope you enjoy it. The idea for the book really came about because there was this moment on a holiday vacation in Hawaii, slightly scary moment that required some, calm-headed thinking to problem solve, and we got through it safely, thank goodness. But as my husband and I were walking back to our Airbnb, he asked the question, how did I know what to do in those circumstances? And when I thought about it, the answer was fairly straightforward. I had learned it from my father. So my father was a wonderful man. I was the luckiest girl on earth to have him. But one of the things that was so meaningful to me as a child is that he taught me how to swim. First in the bay, then later in the ocean, and then to body surf. And that was the thing that we did together. And as a result, I'm very comfortable in the ocean, and I feel like I have a strong skill set for ocean swimming. But after that conversation with my husband, I had to ask myself, gosh, how did it become so ingrained in me? How, after years of not swimming with him in the ocean, am I still able to go into that autopilot mode? And I wondered to myself what other things he may have taught me that may fall into that same category. And after several years of self-reflection on it, I had to acknowledge that beyond just lessons that would logically stick with you and translate in like circumstances, sort of, those lessons that you learn on land that in certain situations they translate again when that situation reoccurs. I found that somehow the swimming lessons themselves had transformed into life skills that I used even when I wasn't swimming. And the true aha moment is that many of those skills, skills of observation, problem solving, decision making, extracting yourself from danger, I use in my framework for grief and loss. So this book idea became sort of this drumbeat in my head that I could not get out. I didn't know what to do with it. Frankly, it was driving me a little crazy. And I decided to consider the idea of actually writing a book and getting it out of my brain and onto paper. I had previously written a children's book, had submitted it to a publisher, had some learnings along the way, and knew that the one thing I had to do was to continue to learn more about publishing in general. So I invested in a trip to the Hay House conference in Phoenix, and I attended the pre-conference workshop on writing. And while there, heard the magical words that in my mind were giving me permission that one thing was true, that everybody's first book is terrible and you should write it anyway. And so that's what I've done. The book has been written to span sort of early years till current day. And most of the chapters have at least been drafted. I've included a few in the review, and you'll see that they're organized a bit by ocean swimming terms or categories. So, what you observe from the shore, how you extract yourself from a rip current, how you navigate, outside sets, which would be those sets of waves that are coming in, how you prepare for those. What happens if you end up not navigating those well and you end up in the churn? And within each of those chapters, I break down the losses and the grief journeys that sort of map to those concepts. I've also included losses that aren't tied to the death of a loved one. Um, Certainly, that is the greatest grief that we experience, but even in the last few years, I've gone from full-time corporate person to um, semi-retired. Turns out I'm terrible at retirement. Um, and there is loss. There is loss of identity. There's, um, loss of old friends where friendships, suddenly drift apart. So I've tried to be very comprehensive because I think that the skill sets that I have translate into all of those loss types. I hope you enjoy the book, and I look forward to feedback on how I might make it more meaningful. Thank you.